Well, thank you, Patrick, and thank you very much for having us here today. The people of Ukraine, ever since this war started in 2014, and especially since the full-scale invasion in 2022, have been suffering, especially in the frontline cities in the east and the south, where the threat of missile attack and aerial bombs is daily. And they live under air raid alerts and sirens all the time, and destruction of their homes possibly and other buildings throughout the areas where they live and work.
Leda, if I may ask a question, within that destruction, how's the loss of grid? 'Cause we know that was an early attack by Russia, affected the daily life, especially on the medical side for people.
Well, certainly we have seen that the Russians have been deliberately attacking the power grid of Ukraine, and that is affecting very many aspects of life. And one of the things we've been able to focus in on is healthcare because of the life-saving nature of that as a critical part of any city. And so the attacks have made it necessary to look at solutions to provide power throughout society.
So Eastern Ukraine, of course, has been hit the hardest. Is there particular cities that we've done some work in already that we can kind of start telling that story about what we're doing there and how that power is affecting people in a positive way with our portable equipment?
For sure. We have been working with people in Kharkiv, which is the largest city in eastern part of Ukraine. It's the second largest city in Ukraine. And we have helped a number of hospitals there and health facilities that are critical to the function of all the hospitals. Also, the city of Dnipro, which is another frontline area city in the east, has a number of our generators supporting hospitals and more frontline regional towns as well. And at the moment, we actually have requests from more of those hospitals in the Dnipro city itself. And then further down along the southern tier, the frontline cities like Kherson and Mykolaiv, we've done a lot of work with and have been somewhat of a forgotten corner in the country because they are attacked very badly and they're not as well supported. Mykolaiv in particular has had one of the worst situations with respect to energy in the healthcare sector.
Yeah. And so is there some specific examples that doctors have shared with you? You've taught me a lot about what's happening in Ukraine. Are there some specific examples of how they're using that portable power equipment at the hospitals to kind of fill the gaps? I think is one thing that you mentioned to me.
Absolutely. So often the end user is really the best to decide how they want to use the power equipment. But what we find most of them would like to use it for is the most life-saving, what I would call mission-critical purposes within the hospital, such as the operating room or the ICU, or also called intensive care or critical care, where in both cases you're running electrical equipment to save life and sustain life. So obviously in the operating room, critical surgeries have to happen and power is a must, and lighting is just only one aspect, but running all the equipment to conduct the operation and the anesthesia equipment as well. And then to keep the patient alive before and after in the ICU on monitors, ventilators and the like.
Because those power outages can happen suddenly during a rocket attack. And sometimes it takes a long time for those generators to actually spin up. So beyond the lights and the ventilators, in their post-recovery surgery, how are they using it to monitor people and keep track of them using the power that's available?
So what we have heard as feedback is people are so grateful to have this equipment because they don't even feel the gap that can happen. So what you're referring to, John, is that most hospitals, actually probably all of them now in Ukraine, have received a large diesel generator as a backup generator for their entire building. But we have heard of time gaps of even as long as 15 and 30 minutes before that diesel generator is up and running and powering everything up again if there's been a total blackout outage for the building. And if you're in an operating room or in an ICU, you cannot tolerate that kind of a gap in time. I mean, a good surgeon will do whatever he or she needs to do, but a person on a ventilator needs to keep breathing. Similarly, we have heard that in the cases where they use the equipment to run their laboratory devices, if there's an interruption in that, they will lose all those samples. They're going to have to waste them, and also the reagents, the liquids that are used in the equipment in the wells of the test. They have to then dispose of and keep it on hand, and that's expensive to reorder as well. And also in some cases we have children's hospitals, and in that case, I'm thinking of in particular, the laboratory is being run by a new use energy generator, and they're so grateful, partly because, can you imagine you have pipettes of 180 tests or 360 tests, and suddenly they're destroyed because you've interrupted the software of the equipment. But also now you have to go ask those children for samples again, and whether it's blood or something, it's traumatic, and another additional thing to go do with these traumatized children.
Yeah, and you're also working with kids in cancer centers, providing continued support. You can't just interrupt a cancer treatment and hope for the best. So this is a critical part of that story as well.
Absolutely, any kind of timed procedure. The doctors who use our equipment are grateful to have that reliability and I would call it predictability of their outcome of what they're doing, and it's important when you plan any kind of intervention medically.
Yeah, and we're talking about children and the cancer centers that we're providing power for. How can you tell us a little bit about how we're supporting education in Ukraine with reliable power?
Oh yes, that is another very important sector, and we have had a lot of requests recently for power for schools in these beleaguered districts near the front areas, and in particular in Mykolaiv right now, there's a regional authority that has requested 8 of the sun kits for specific schools, and we have all the specific stories and why, and there are situations and how many children will benefit from that reliability and power for their day-long, classroom use and all the things that they need to run, not just the lights, but computers.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you guys are probably wondering what we're talking about, so I'll do just a moment to describe the equipment that we're building in Ukraine, as well as here in the United States, the supply equipment. It's a lithium-ion based portable unit that is inside of a large, familiar-looking case that looks a lot like a Pelican case. It can take solar, and it can charge the large units in 3 hours, and our smaller units charge in 90 minutes. So when those generators do kick on, as Leda described, we can get those units charged back up and make sure that they're ready for the next power outage, either a planned or unplanned power outage. We had some questions as well from some Rotarians about how to use solar, and the traditional glass panels, unfortunately, that you see, or you see around here in the United States, they just don't survive the shrapnel, and we saw a lot of loss early on of those panels. And so one of the things that New Use does is we build panels in Ukraine, I believe, and they are of flexible nature, sort of what you would see on a sailboat or something like that, and they're a military grade unit, so they're very resistant to damage because it's not a traditional piece of glass, it's actually a special plastic type material. It allows them to deploy when they can, and if the air raid sirens happen, it gives them a chance to actually bring them off of the roofs or out of the windows so that they can keep them safe. So we're able to bring this very reliable power to Ukraine, both on the medical side and we hope on the education side as well.
And it does allow for a lot of portability if you have not just the portable power unit, but a portable solar tarp, so to speak. It's actually called a sun tarp. And you can take it with you even if, say, you're moving within a school from a computer lab to another part of the building where they might need power for the next part of the day, for example. But the units itself, the power devices, have a large battery that can basically you can run everything that you're doing off of that battery, and it's just a matter of how you will be recharging that battery, whether it's solar or from plugging into the wall or even from a gas generator.
Yeah, Yeah, so it really makes a great supplementary power supply that's highly portable, and if things get really crazy, I think we've even seen entire hospitals be collapsed. Do you want to tell that story about the doctor pulling himself out of the rubble of the hospital?
Yes, there was a temporary medical facility set up in the east, and we didn't even hear about this for quite a while until this doctor remarked, "Oh, we will be forever grateful to you because your device saved our lives." And I said, "Excuse me, what? What happened?" And he said, "Oh yes, well, we were attacked with 3 aerial bombs. Our facility collapsed. Unfortunately, tragically, one of the medical team perished, and 6 survived of 7. And this doctor who ran that location knew where the Sun Case 2025 was in the room because he had set up an autonomously powered zone of the most critical use in the facility. And for him, that is blood refrigeration and powering things around, the ability to use fresh blood on site, and communications devices. So when they have dispatch and all the reasons to be in communication, recharging the Motorola batteries and running the Starlink. So he knew where the News Energy device was in the room, and it was near the Starlink, and he was able to pull those 2 out. The Starlinks there are ruggedized military type, and that survived too, thank God, because then he was able to call for help and evacuation of his team.
Yeah, so what a great way to have portable power. And I presume they took that unit with them, and they're still able to use it today?
That's right, because it's ruggedized, and that Pelican style case that you mentioned is very tough, and I was not surprised at all that it survived a horrific looking scene. I mean, I think we will share those photos with you, and you can see it's just a sea of rubble. And in one photo in particular, there's the only clue that anything medical had happened there, some overturned refrigerator and other furniture pieces that were there, some fixtures that look vaguely medical. But everything else is just rubble, and it was quite a situation to hear about, and we're so happy that our device saved the remaining 6, the lives of the remaining 6 medical personnel.
Yeah, it is a great product, and we're very proud to have Leda helping us support the efforts there, along with Paul Shmotoloka, who's our CEO, and working there to make the inroads and be able to provide equipment. And we look forward to the help from the Rotarians and being able to bring this portable power to everybody. And we would appreciate any help and support that we can get.